But Medieval Chronicles presents Could You Survive the Middle Ages? The cruelest deaths in history, the Middle Ages. A world forged in blood, faith and fear. A time when kingdoms rose and fell, and death was never far away. But beyond wars and plagues, there was a darker side. A side where pain wasn't just a punishment, it was a spectacle. Today, we enter that world. A world ruled by fear and faith. To understand why medieval punishments were so cruel, we must step into the mind of the age. Between the 5th and 15th centuries, life in Europe was built on fragile foundations. Disease was constant, war was frequent, and superstition shaped everyday life. For most people, survival itself was a daily battle. Death could arrive with a cough, a wound, or a whisper of accusation. Justice was not about fairness, it was about order, control, and fear. In many kingdoms, religion and law were woven together like threads in the same tapestry. Sin and crime were often the same thing. To defy the king or the church was to defy God himself. And for that, the punishment had to be not just severe, but unforgettable. Medieval justice had a purpose far beyond retribution. It was theatre. Public executions were staged like moral lessons, a terrifying show meant to keep others in line. And so, methods of death became increasingly inventive, each designed to prolong pain and imprint terror into the collective mind. When death was a spectacle, imagine walking through a medieval town square. Bells toll. A crowd gathers, men and women push forward, children sit on their fathers' shoulders. What they're about to see isn't a play, it's real. The condemned is dragged to the center. A wooden platform rises above the people. Soldiers form a wall. A priest whispers a final prayer. No one turns away, because death in this world is not hidden, it's a lesson. The stake and the flames, one of the most infamous deaths of the medieval era, was burning at the stake. Fire was considered both purifying and terrifying. It consumed not just the body, but the soul as sins, at least in the eyes of those who watched. The victim would be tied to a thick wooden pole, straw and dry wood piled high around their feet. Sometimes, if mercy was granted, the executioner placed gunpowder at the chest or strangled the victim before the flames rose. But often, mercy did not come. The fire began slowly. The crowd would hear screams long before seeing flames. The air filled with smoke, flesh, and the sound of crackling wood. This method wasn't just a punishment, it was a message. For heretics, witches, or political enemies, fire was the price of defiance. Among the most famous victims was Joan of Arc, burned alive in 1431. Her execution was a spectacle of both terror and power. The theatre of the guillotine's ancestors long before the guillotine became infamous in France. Medieval Europe already had its own brutal ways of beheading. The axe was often dull. Executioners were not always skilled. A single clean strike was rare. Some victims endured 2, 3, and 4 blows before their head finally fell. But beheading was considered a noble death. It was often reserved for aristocrats or knights, a faster, more honorable end compared to the horrors inflicted on commoners. Still, even noble blood could not guarantee dignity. One wrong swing could turn a solemn execution into a nightmarish display. The wheel of breaking for traitors and rebels, death often came on the breaking wheel. The condemned was tied to a massive wooden wheel, limbs spread like the spokes of a sun. Then came the iron bar. Each limb was systematically crushed, bone by bone. But the executioner avoided striking the heart or head. The victim needed to stay alive, to suffer, to serve as an example, once the bones were shattered. The twisted body was woven through the spokes of the wheel and displayed high for all to see. Death could take hours, sometimes days. This was not justice. It was a performance of power. The torture of rats in the dark corners of medieval dungeons, pain was delivered in quieter ways. One method, rarely spoken of, but feared deeply, involved rats. The victim lay on a wooden table. A metal pot filled with rats was placed on their bare abdomen. The pot was then heated from the outside. Terrified and desperate to escape the rising heat, the rats dug downward into the only soft surface they could find, human flesh. The agony was unimaginable. There were no crowds here, no sermons, just screams echoing off cold stone walls. It was not only a punishment, but a way to break the human soul. Impalement. Terror-made flesh among the most horrific methods was impalement. A sharpened stake was forced through the body, often through the rectum or lower abdomen, and slowly raised upright, letting gravity do the rest. This method is most notoriously associated with Vlad III Draculae, known as Vlad the Impaler. Victims did not die quickly. Sometimes they lived for hours, sometimes days. Their bodies, lifted high on stakes, lined the roads like ghastly warnings. It was cruelty turned into political theatre, a message written in blood. Death by disease. Not every cruel death came at the hands of executioners. Many came silently, through the invisible touch of disease. The peste negra, the Black Death, swept through Europe in the 14th century, killing an estimated 50 million people. Imagine the signs: swollen buboes under the arms, blackened skin, fever burning through the body, pain so intense that some clawed their own flesh. Doctors wore beaked masks filled with herbs, believing they could block the disease, but nothing worked. Death came quickly or slowly. Entire villages disappeared in silence, leaving behind only bones. The plague was not just an illness, it was a reminder of how fragile human life was in the Middle Ages. No sword, no fire, no trial, just darkness. Justice, power, and fear. These executions and deaths were not random, they were carefully constructed systems of power. In medieval Europe, rulers and the church understood one thing very well: fear controls. A public death wasn't only about punishing the guilty, it was about shaping the minds of the living. When a man was burned, hundreds watched and learned. When a traitor was broken on the wheel, others bowed lower to their lords. When a witch was burned, others whispered their prayers in fear. Even diseases, though unplanned, reinforced that sense of human fragility. People believed death was God's judgment, and that obedience might bring mercy. To us, these deaths seem unimaginable. But in the medieval mind, pain and death had meaning. Life expectancy was short. Faith shaped how people understood suffering. Many believed pain purified the soul. Public punishment wasn't just accepted, it was expected. And for those in power, cruelty wasn't madness, it was strategy. Would you survive? Now, imagine yourself there. You wake up in a wooden house. There's no electricity, no antibiotics. An accusation, true or false, could lead to a dungeon. A fever could be the end. A rumor could take your freedom. Could you survive? Most of us, shaped by modern comforts and rights, probably wouldn't last long in that world. But not because we are weak, but because the Middle Ages were built to break people. It was a world that believed suffering was a part of order, and death, cruel, spectacular, and unavoidable, was never far away. Echoes of the past. But here's the truth that chills. The cruelty of medieval executions was not just about the past. It tells us something uncomfortable about human nature. Pain has been used throughout history as a tool of control. The Middle Ages only perfected the performance. And though we've left the stake, the wheel and the dungeon behind, the hunger for spectacle, for punishment, for fear has never truly disappeared. It just wears different faces. The Middle Ages were not only castles and knights, saints and scholars. They were also fire, iron, and screams carried by the wind. So the question remains, would you survive a world where death was a lesson, where fear was law, where cruelty was part of everyday life? Maybe the answer says as much about the past as it does about us. If this story lit a spark within you, let it blaze like a torch through time. Like, subscribe, and stand with us as history awakens.